Hello and welcome. My name is Steve Pugh. Every Monday at 4 p.m., I try and introduce you to interesting people that I think will hopefully help your business or career. But then, likewise, the more people I kind of speak to and that kind of thing, just within the community, I always like to basically raise, comment and stuff on important issues. But then, likewise, we're all kind of in this game together, going through our lives, and we often kind of, get caught up in or focus on stuff that, in the grand scheme of things, isn't necessarily that important. So when I've known Chris, which we'll go on to kind of talking about soon for a while. When I heard about his story, which I'll let him tell in his words, it was something I just wanted to get on, both to help Chris kind of raise awareness on stuff. But then likewise, I think it's also important just to have a conversation around important issues because actually that's important for everyone. So I'm going to jump straight in. If you've got any comments or questions, please drop them in the kind of chat. Obviously, I'll ask them if they're appropriate. And Chris, I'm just going to bring you in. There we go. So everyone can now see you. Would you like to say hi?
Hi.
That's nice and simple. So we first met, as far as I can remember. So I was at the Tees Valley LEP at the time, TVU, and we were just setting up the Tees Valley Catalyst Fund, and we ended up partnering with FW Capital, where you were at the time. And it was just, that's a good kind of 10-ish years ago. And I know obviously since then you went to DCLG for a bit and you had various kind of, jobs across the Northeast. But it was just, in your own words, like almost why we're here today?
All right. So, I'm Chris Johnson. I'm 41-year-old. I'm a northerner, a dad, a runner, and I guess for the benefit of my CV, finance professional is what I would loosely call myself. As Steve said, a few years back, I worked for FW Capital, which is part of the Finance Wales group at the time, on a fund in the Tees Valley. The why are we here today? I guess, and I'll sort of try and be quite blunt about it, but I guess what I'd like to get across is the rather obvious message that life is short and the importance of making the most of it. And when I tell you a little bit more about my story, you'll see why.
But I think that's also important because when I think I wanted the context that we've known each other for a while, just because I wanted to also get across that people always think, arguably I did or do as well, it'll never be me, it'll be never anyone I know, etc. And that's not always the case. And would you like to go into more detail? Just I don't want to say it or get it wrong.
No, that's fine. No, okay. So the headline here is that I've got terminal cancer. Probably the best thing to do is to take you back and start from the beginning though. So grab yourself a cuppa and make yourself comfortable. In the summer of 2019 is when I first became ill. At first, all I noticed was that my energy levels were dropping. Sorry, I'll stop waving my hand in front of the camera.
You can wave whatever you want.
So at first, all I noticed was that my energy levels were dropping. It happened quite slowly over a number of weeks. So I think like any other idiot, I just started drinking more coffee, progressing on to sort of double espressos from Starbucks and cans of Red Bull to the point where I was rarely without a caffeinated drink in my hand. I was 39-year-old, 3 young kids at home, and a job that involved quite a bit of travel, as well as a number of commitments outside of work. So, for example, I was director at an academy school locally. So being tired wasn't a surprise, but it became obvious after a few weeks that I'd gone beyond just normal tiredness. When I eventually took myself to the GP, it turned out that I was severely anemic, to the point where my GP put me in a wheelchair and wheeled me across the car park to the accident and emergency.
Wow.
At Sunderland Royal. Now, I say that because it's no mean feat. I'm 6'4" and 17 stone, so no sensible GP takes that on lightly. And he wheeled me all the way across. He saw it as that urgent. So I spent a couple of weeks having blood and iron transfusions, and after a few months of investigations, endoscopies, colonoscopies, and countless blood tests, I was diagnosed as having cancer. Specifically, I had a relatively rare sort of tumour. It's a GIST, a gastrointestinal stomal tumour in my small bowel. In January 2020, the tumour, along with a few bits of my small bowel, were removed surgically. The operation was a success, so the original tumour was removed. But by the summer of 2020, my routine scans showed that, unfortunately, the cancer had already spread to my liver, and is unfortunately incurable. From that point on, the treatment became really about keeping the growth and the spread of the tumour to a minimum. Shrinking it is not impossible, but it's unlikely. So it's really about keeping everything stable. I started on a medication at the time called imatinib. For the sort of the benefit of laymen, it's an alternative to chemo. It's deemed more appropriate for the sort of cancer that I've got. The side effects of the imatinib for me were pretty rotten. Now, I guess what I always have to say is different people react differently to different sorts of cancer treatments. So I certainly wouldn't want to give anyone the impression that imatinib isn't effective. For many people, it's very effective. It just so happened that it hit me hard. The side effects hit me hard. So I spent probably the better part of 6 months at the end, the second half of 2020, barely able to get out of bed most days. Just before Christmas, my treatment changed. I started on sunitinib, which really is a very similar drug to imatinib. Different people, again, react differently. So for many people, the side effects for sunitinib would be worse, but for me, the drug has been slightly more effective, and the side effects are considerably more manageable. So I guess that's probably where my story has a bit of a plot twist. That sort of brings us up to the last 6 months.
Before we go into the plot twist, and then the whole point of everything we're trying to do is to both help raise awareness, and it's going to be my next question about how, it's a classic thing. Say with testicular cancer, people always say, check yourself out, and say breast cancer and that kind of thing. With what you have, is there anything people can do or get checked out, or any recommendations or that kind of thing, or is it just a potluck?
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult one to answer, because I know when we've spoken before, and I said I feel lucky that I got diagnosed early. And it sounds ridiculous. I'm sitting here with probably only a couple of years left, but the sad truth is that if I'd been diagnosed even a couple of months later, I might not be here now. The last couple of years, the pandemic in particular has made this the reality for far too many people, that they haven't had the chance to be diagnosed, and it is unfortunately going to be too late for many. I think that's probably a subject for a different time, how the pandemic's been handled. But unfortunately, we are facing a massive cancer crisis. So I can't emphasize enough that if you've got any sort of worries or symptoms, to get checked out. And I know getting an appointment at your GP is not an easy thing to do, but push for it, keep going. So, I was a fit and healthy 39-year-old. I had no history of illness, no particular family history of cancer. I haven't got cancer because of any lifestyle choices. It was completely random. In my case, the only real symptoms were fatigue, but you would normally expect the sort of cancer that I have is very similar symptoms wise to bowel cancer. So, pay attention to changes in bowel movements and explain weight loss, changing appetite, etc. Just anything out of the ordinary with your body, pay attention.
Yeah, I think blokes are especially, I say, bad at this. So the guy that raised me, so he wasn't my stepdad, but almost he was mum's partner for 25, 30 years. Basically, he died of cancer at 55. And what happened with him, his name was Peter, was basically he just ignored the symptoms. And it was I'll be fine. I've got this pain. I'll ignore it. And it went on for years and years and years. And you are right, though, is in some ways that at least the process isn't pretty. It's not nice. But at least and you get the chance to plan and talk and stuff. As where, there's a chance that I could be killed or you or anyone else on the road on the way home, that you never get that. And I think it's always that balance is that everyone wants to have like a meaningful life and feel that they can give back in some way and just actually, help people make an impact that at least, a lot of people coast, I think, through their lives. That actually, when you have a warning shot or however you want to do it, it's that, I've got some very, very close, family and stuff that have had cancer scares like recently. And also I'm 38 myself. So almost, in some ways I am you 2 years ago. And it's just, but but it's because of that and because it's real. I wanted to talk about it, help share your story, and likewise, we're going to talk about the fundraising and the challenging and stuff, challenges that you're doing. Just because I don't want people to think it'll never happen to me, because So, would you like to talk about the twist, as you said?
Yes. So my medication changed at Christmas. After a few weeks, it was quite well. I didn't have any side effects, so it was quite clear that I was gonna be able to manage this a little bit better than the previous medication I've been on. So I started running. I think, and it feels like a lifetime ago. Going back to February, I just had this burst of energy. It felt amazing after a rubbish year, and especially after 6 months on my medication, where I was, I'd absolutely on the floor most of the time with fatigue. So I started running just a couple of miles, just running around the streets, and then I decided that I wanted to do something a bit more positive. I wanted to put my new energy to some use. So I contacted Children with Cancer UK and asked them if they had any places at the Great North Run, which they did, and they were delighted to have me on board. So I thought, all right, I've got kind of 8 months to prepare for the Great North Run. And I went out with a real gusto and started running a little bit more each day. Mm-hmm. After a couple of weeks, I got a burst of, well, I guess sort of insanity, really, and rang Children with Cancer up and says, actually, do you have any places at the London Marathon? Wow. So after having been running with terminal cancer and on medication for what was about 3.5 weeks, I'd signed up for the Great North Run and the London Marathon. Having not done the London Marathon before, it was it's a real bucket list event for me. So I was,
for a lot of people,
over the moon that they had places and wanted to take me on. I'm guessing they had to check their insurance policies and things first, but they were delighted to have me. So here we are.
When is it? When's the date?
The Great North Run's on the 12th of September, and the London Marathon's on the 3rd of October. So we're 8 weeks away from that now.
But I must say, it's because my wife is training for a marathon, and I know how much both time and effort and how difficult it is, and it's a big challenge. But in a really positive way. I wrote a bucket list when I was probably 18 of things that I wanted to do in my life, and one of them was climb Everest, and one of the others was run a marathon. And it's just it's a big challenge. But one of the things I always find funny about running is in general as a sport is that it's a challenge against yourself. there'll always be other people faster. It doesn't matter how fast you are. Even if you're Mo Farah, there's people faster. You know what I mean? But it's
Yeah.
that way that when people always say, "Oh, what time are you going for me, when I go out, I don't even time myself. I just get in my own little space and just do it.
Yeah.
So in terms of when you've actually, what's the aim of, you're obviously trying to raise money at the moment. What's the target?
So originally I'd set a target with the charity of £3,000.
Hmm.
I think both I and the sort of contacts at the charity were blown away by how quickly we hit that. Um, so I spoke to them again, and I suggested increasing the target, and they kind of said, "Well, why don't you set it as 10,000 and see how close you can get to that?" I don't think anyone really expected us to get to it, but as of this morning, I'm at about 8,600. So, I'm pretty confident that we're going to get there, and perhaps even further. I think it's been amazing, and I don't take it for granted. I know that it's because my stories resonated with
Hmm.
people, and people can really understand the challenge of it all. So I'm over the moon with the support that I've had so far.
So I've put the links for everyone in the chat, and I'll do it wherever it gets reposted on YouTube or whatever. I'll always kind of keep it up as well. And again, it's important on different levels. Even just when I have this one pet peeve, and I know one person at the moment that's doing it, that when they go on what I would class as an adventure holiday, but like big boy ones to like Everest kind of level, and they ask for sponsorship, and it's like, no, you just want to. I would do that for fun. That's not a challenge in terms of
Yeah.
giving to communities to go through. You just want to do it, and you want someone else to pay for it. This is 100% the right level of. It's a massive challenge,
Yeah.
which is great, and I really hope that people kind of get behind it and support it. But then, likewise, have you found, has running actually, you said you had a burst of energy in your kind of fitness levels, but actually almost has doing more exercise increased that? Has it helped? Have you found?
Uh, yeah, it has. So the unfortunate truth about the medication, even that I'm on now, it is that I get tired. Not anything like what I was getting with the previous drug that I was on, but I, so I take sunitinib for 4 weeks, and then I get 2 weeks off. And the reason I get 2 weeks off is just that
Let your body
it would be
recover.
unmanageable otherwise.
Yeah.
So I have to train around that, and some months have been better than others. Last month I basically lost a week of training because I couldn't do more than a few miles at a time. So I try and time it, and I try and mix the training up again. So last month, because I couldn't run, I ended up heading over to the Lake District and climbing a couple of fells, which sounds a bit counterintuitive, but it's actually I found it. Um, I found it a bit easier than doing a long run, and
Yeah.
more importantly than that, the change really did me good. The change of scenery, the standing up on the top of a mountain and looking out across Ullswater was
Mm.
a real big motivation, and that's carried me through the next couple of weeks. Um, so yeah, it's not easy, and I appreciate, maybe 5 or 10 years ago doing a marathon might not have been that big a challenge for me when I was in good health, but circumstances being what they are,
I think
it
people respect it regardless.
now.
Yeah, yeah. Would you like to plug your social media accounts? Because I know you track a lot of your progress on there, but I think it's the kind of thing that I think people should follow if they can.
Yeah. So the easiest thing to do is look for me on Twitter or Instagram. It's the same handle. It's at got the gist of it. So GOTTHEGISTOFIT, and there you go. So my brain's addled with the medication these days, and I can't spell things.
Well, to be honest, I've
Um,
noticed. I think it's an age thing because just in the past like 2 months, I find I muddle my words a lot more than I used to. And I think it's just an age thing. I'll be honest.
yeah, I've given up on trying to correct myself anymore. I think people are letting me off with it now.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So one of the questions that we said, the topics that we said that we would almost talk about was almost like the change in mindset, how your approach to life, I guess, changed both before and after diagnosis.
Yeah. So it's it's difficult. I don't think my outlook has changed so much has been focused. Um, no, I think like so many people, and probably many people watching and listening to this, I messed around in my teens. I did all right at school, nowhere near as good as I could have done, but certainly, you know, better than I could have done as well. I did what I needed. In my 20s, I worked hard and played harder, and you know, I was in Canary Wharf, sort of living like a northern Gordon ghetto with designer suits and eating in fancy restaurants, but then not having enough money to put petrol in the car before payday. So I, you know, I enjoyed my 20s. My 30s was when I started to settle down and take life seriously. Um, I suppose my wife would probably tell you I'm not quite mature yet, but
I don't think anyone is. The best people aren't, I'll be honest.
but you know, professionally, I think I expected my 40s to be really about knuckling down and specializing and that's when I was expecting to be able to enjoy work and have a decent work and family balance. You know, unfortunately, the cosmos has got different ideas, but beneath all of the plans and the details of what I wanted from work, I think my basic outlook has always been to try and leave life in credit. You know,
Mm-hmm.
try and give a little bit more than I take from the world. And you know, this is probably my opportunity to do that. So.
Mm. But I think you are both already achieved that. But it's like when you know, because obviously I follow you on Twitter and stuff, but it's, you know, people who comment on your story. And I think the thing that's also funny about cancer is that because everyone has a story, everyone knows someone, everyone has the relative, and it's going to be different for everyone. But
Yeah.
actually, you know, it's something that we all have in common. I think is also, it's just one of those things that the fair enough. So with your training, how far are you training the full distance? Or are you following like a marathon training plan or?
As it stands, I'm aiming to train the full distance.
Wow.
Again, I'm at the mercy of the medication. So when it gets nearer the time, if I haven't run the distance, I won't beat myself up about it. I'll aim to run as much as I can and walk if necessary. But at the moment, the plan is to run the full distance, and ideally, I would do that sort of sometime in mid-September, so that I've done it and can then train normally for a couple of weeks before the
Mm.
marathon. So yeah, there's definitely a plan there, but like all plans, it sort of goes out the window as soon as you start trying to implement
Yeah.
it.
Again, my wife who's training for marathon, a lot of the plans, because she did it last year, but she was running arguably the full distance in the build up, but almost her knees and stuff were starting to break down just because it's a long way. It's
Yeah,
hard. But actually, a lot of the plans now say to run 30 kilometers and then almost just go through the pain on the day to the next 10,
yeah,
as a, you know, because the damage is then done, but you can rest, as opposed to if you do the full distance. But it's a hell of a challenge. And Simon Rudd, who's following, I don't know if you know Simon, but he's followed you on Twitter and Instagram, and I think that's almost part of it for me. It's raising awareness on different kind of things.
yeah.
How can people get involved? Just to show you support, I guess they can follow your socials, hopefully donate some money and track your progress.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all of the links and everything are on my Twitter and Instagram. You know, the fundraising page is a long-winded one. It's virginmoneygiving.com/John Sock1, but I think Steve will probably
I've put
post
the
it.
links in. Yeah.
But yeah, you know, all donations are welcome. Everything goes straight to the charity, so they get to use it straight away. And I think, you know, as long as I'm feeling relatively fit and sort of in inverted commas healthy after the London Marathon, I'm sure there'll be something else that I'd sign up to do. I've been having a look at the UK 3 peaks maybe for next year if I'm still in any condition to do it.
But like from a lot of the stuff that I've read over the years, when you have a goal to aim for, it, the body can do amazing things. You just keep going and keep, you know, because it feels like you're. But actually, sometimes when people give up is when you have, you know, it really kind of hits you. So I think it's
Yeah.
really kind of it's both impressive, but actually I think positive to have these big targets. And actually, you'll probably be in the best shape of your life in some ways when you actually kind of do that, because it's a hell of a challenge to do a marathon. Relating to this, I was going to ask you where you get your inspiration from.
So, I mean, in reality, it's been easy to be inspired. I get up every morning, and you know what, if I don't get out of bed and start doing something, then you know what's the point? I know my time is limited.
Yeah,
I've got a family that needs me to be there for them, and I've got, you know, a fundraising challenge that's going well, and I want it to go better. I don't want to stop there. I want to fill my time with positive things. So finding inspiration hasn't been that hard. Um, but I guess the soppy answer is that I get it from my family and my friends at the minute.
yeah. Well, that's always the best way. But I get it. But yeah, no, it's right that when inspirational quotes and famous people saying stuff is fine, but it's when you have your own kind of drivers and you know actually what kind of in yourself what drives yourself. I think it's always the most important thing. So every week I ask the guests, almost two questions which have their own kind of section on YouTube. And it's, for me, this is just really important. It's a way to give back. It helps me learn as well, I won't lie. And it's just, advice and things that they've learned over the years. So can I ask, what's the best piece of advice you ever had?
Yeah, so it took me a while. I think I've had so much advice down the years, and going back to where I find my inspiration, I think I spent years reading up on the 7 habits of highly effective people. I've read all the books. I've seen all the TED talks. So I've just had years of good motivation, years of good advice, and all of it's great. But I guess the standout bit for me is just win or lose, learn and move on. And what I get from that is life's too short to waste time dwelling on
Yeah,
losses or resting on laurels. So I think too many people become consumed after a failure or after a single success, that they end up missing future opportunities and learning, and they miss the opportunity to go again or go better, because they're focusing on something that's already happened. So yeah, win or lose, learn, move on.
no, I think it's cool because again, a lot of people focus on stuff that doesn't mean anything as well. I think often we are our own worst enemy in terms of. Have you ever read the Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters? It's almost when just something inside you chews you up, and then you just like, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. And then likewise, a lot of what I do traditionally is talk about business stuff and how to drive sales and that kind of thing. But also, in the grand scheme of things, in your case, none of that matters. You know what I mean? And I think it's often it's been a really useful reset for me. But likewise, I think it's also a really important message to share, because it's that balance of where you have to do what makes you happy, and never forget that, if that makes sense. And it's just often with a lot of people that I work with, it's they often realize too late what they had and stuff. And at least I'm sure you have really good quality time with the family and stuff, apart from the England game, even though you had two Sunderland players in the match, both of whom played well. But it was just cool. And then the other question which I ask is, if you were to give advice to your younger self, and so this is you, it could be the Gordon Gecko days, it could be whenever you want, it could be at school, whatever, what would it be?
I think, just to follow on from the theme, it's don't take criticism from anyone you wouldn't take advice from. I think I've lost too much time over the years worrying about negative feedback, or fretting about what someone thought of me that ultimately didn't matter. The only people whose opinions really matter are those of your family and friends, and obviously the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all can lose days,
Mm-hmm.
weeks worrying about something that someone
Years.
said, and they move on. They say it, they move on. Whether that's a boss or a stranger in the street or someone in the pub, you have to learn to just to ditch it and move on.
I think it's a good one. I think it's good. Is there anything else you would like to talk about or plug before we go? I'm just very conscious of your time, and I'm one of these people that I can talk for hours, as last week proved. So it's just, yeah, would you like to do one last kind of call to action about where people can follow you on Twitter and the challenge and stuff that you're doing?
Again, yeah. So it's got the gist of it on Twitter or Instagram. I guess if I've been in Runner's World and various other pages recently. So if you were to Google Chris Johnson running or Chris Johnson London Marathon or Chris Johnson cancer, you've got a reasonable chance that I'll come up. So have a look. And look at whatever stage you're in your personal life or your career. Work hard at it, but make sure you're enjoying it. And if you're not enjoying it, make the changes now before it's too late.
No, cool. Well, I appreciate your time. If you ever want a running partner, I'm not very fast, but it's I will happily come and join you. Although I can't promise that I could do the full distance, but just I'll join you for a little bit, and then it's
Fantastic.
cool. But no, I appreciate your time. Hopefully, at the very least, it'll hopefully make some people think. It'll make me think in terms of, just I'm one of these people that when you have a problem, I kind of tend to ignore it. And but I think that's just a typical thing in blokes. So blokes especially, it's almost where women are a lot better at doing what they're supposed to do and giving advice and going to doctors. Men, because we are stubborn, horrible people, often we don't do it, but it kind of proves it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, sorry, what was that?
Don't leave it too late. That's all. So.
And Jonathan Parks as well, saying good luck with the marathon as well. So what I'll do is that I will continually kind of track your progress, and I'll post about it and stuff as well. And genuinely kind of best of luck. It's a genuine offer if you ever want a running partner.
Yeah, I'm sure I will.
but you just give me a shout, and I'm sure it'd be cool. And stay in touch. Look after yourself, and speak to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, cheers, mate. Thank you. Bye.